Bible verse I selected for you today is found in the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verses 1 through 3. Yes, these are the words Jesus Christ said to the disciples on that Thursday night, the Last Supper. And this was his final message to them. Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. So we have a story and a narrative, and I've taken it from the Gospel of Mark. Tuesday, Jesus and the disciples were at that house in Bethany. Simon the leper had a meal for Christ and his disciples as a thank you. He'd been healed of leprosy, and in those days, if you had leprosy, you had to live outside the town. You were not permitted, and if you saw anyone coming at all, you had to start shouting, "Unclean, unclean, I'm unclean," and people would avoid you. And if you were lucky, your family would feed you. They'd set food outside the town for you and tell you when they were going to come. And they would leave the food. And then, as they left, because you couldn't get in close contact with them, you would take that food and you would feel pretty lucky that you had it. And everyone was convinced that you had had some great sin in your life, that you had leprosy. Well, during that time, the chief priests and rulers were plotting to take Christ's life. And that Tuesday night, a lady came in with some expensive perfume. And she anointed Christ's feet. Simon had not had the foot washing. No one had washed the feet. And the Lord could read Simon's thoughts. The Lord can read our thoughts too. And Simon was thinking, if the Lord knew what kind of a woman that was and what she has done. He wasn't thinking about what he had done to her, but he was thinking if the Lord knew that it was that kind, he wouldn't be permitting her to put that on. And Jesus kind of gently lectured Simon and said, when I came, you had no water for my feet. This lady has washed my feet with her tears and dried my feet with her long hair. And she anointed me with this perfume. And Judas, who carried the bag, was kind of indignant about that. We could have sold that perfume and given the money to the poor. Not that he had any regard for the poor, but he kept the bag and he helped himself. And we read in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 14, beginning at verse 12. And the first day of unleavened bread, when they killed the Passover, his disciples said unto him, Where wilt thou that we go and prepare that they mayest eat the Passover? And he sendeth forth two of his disciples, and saith unto them, Go ye into the city, and there you shall meet a young man bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him. What was the likelihood of meeting a man carrying a pitcher of water then? That would be a rare sight. That was considered women's work. and said, "And wheresoever he shall go in, say ye to the good man of the house, the master saith, where is the guest chamber where I shall eat the Passover with my disciples? And he will show you a large upper room, furnished and prepared. There make ready for us." And his disciples went forth and came to the city, and found as he had said unto them, and they made ready for the Passover. The Lord knows. The Lord had things all prepared. He had things set up in advance. I like to say to people, that's why we shouldn't worry and fret in the church. The Lord has resources of which we have none. And when we cut the cake at our celebration of being debt-free, I'm planning to share with you some of those miracle stories that have happened in the past with this church, where the Lord has supplied, where we had people worry. People worry, how is it going to happen? How is it going to happen? How are we going to accomplish this? We have so little. How are we going to do it? Well, I tell you, the Lord has opened the windows of heaven in the past, and blessings have flowed. This church has been a blessed church from the start. We started out as a little branch Sabbath school from the Banning Church. And that's all we were, was a little branch Sabbath school. And the Lord blessed. And we have a church setting here. That's just a little teaser, so you'll come. I want you to come. And as Paul Harvey says, then you will hear the rest of the story. This Passover, they gathered in Jerusalem, and the disciples had that fear because they knew the plot was in. And Judas was tired of waiting for Christ to declare himself the rightful king. He thought there was going to be an uprising and Jesus would become the king and he would be the secretary of the treasury and he would have control of all the nation's money. And he decided to push Jesus' hands. He knew that every time they tried to arrest Jesus and grab him and kill him, Jesus escaped. He would walk right through the people when they tried to push him over the cliff. He just walked right through the people, and they couldn't lay a hand on him. He thought this time he'd make a little profit. He charged 30 pieces of silver. You hear that phrase again and again. And people are offering, and they're told, you just keep your 30 pieces of silver. We're not going to betray. Jesus was led to the slaughter. He willingly went as our Passover lamb, as payment for all the wrongs ever committed. And he rose again. I could go into more detail, but we know that story so well. But as we partake in the communion, we're going to wash one another's feet. And we are going to proceed with the communion. And we're going to celebrate the fact that we have salvation, that we have forgiveness of sins. And at this time, we are going to celebrate the ordinance of humility,